and I want to thank you again. It's my honor to open today. We are continuing, for those of you joining us here in Seoul, if it's your first time to South Korea, in 2010, there was a UNESCO second convening of the World Conference on art education. So there were members from 70 countries at the time, and it was the first time globally that they made a pact to commit to art education, lifelong art education for everybody. Each of us, I think, are situated in contexts where that's still very much a struggle. And I think that's part of what brings us here together. And then today's session is very special. We have programmed for you a way of really thinking about where we've come and where we're going in terms of thinking about not just arts in society, but artists in society. And for that, we have Özge Ersoy joining us from Asia Art Archive, who has many hats and many roles, but is going to teach us about custodianship and generosity. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I really wanted to thank Tammy, Daniel, and the Arts and Society Research Network for this invitation. I'm really, really honored to be here. So what I would like to address today is one of the central themes of the conference, as Tammy mentioned, the pedagogies of the arts, exploring the ways in which we teach and we learn through artistic practice. And I want to pose the following question for us. How does the archive become a method? A method to reimagine how the narrative of art are produced and also circulated. And in this presentation, I will speak about Asia Art Archive and speak about how we try to integrate archival research, art historical research with artistic production. And I would like to convey that the archives are not merely repositories of materials, and they can claim the position of being storytellers, so they can make propositions, they can pose questions, they can make speculations, and most importantly, they can invite others to come and to shape the narratives that they contain. I want to start with an introduction to Asia Art Archive, and then I'll focus on a case study, which is one of our most recent projects to discuss how the archive socializes and how the archive imagines, and also how it remains in a state of flux. So Asia Art Archive is located on the 11th floor of an office building in Sheungwan, which is an old neighborhood in Hong Kong. And our library that you can see in this photograph is open to the public. There is no membership, and it offers access 6 days a week. So this is the view that you see as you walk out of the elevator on the 11th floor. So the first thing that you encounter is the reading room of our space, oftentimes with users in the middle. Here, the tables are quite empty. And if you look at the background, you will encounter the city landscape. So this type of porosity and proximity is quite crucial for the work that we do. And if we go back to 2000, this is when we were established. Asia Art Archive started in response to the urgent need to document and to make accessible the multiple recent histories of art in the region. Our team is currently around 35 people, and this includes archivists, researchers, educators, curators, and editors. And we work collaboratively to work on archives, to develop programs. The aim is to also activate these archives. And what we try to think about is how we can contribute to what our founding director, Claire Shu, calls a more generous art history. And my role as a curator at the archive involves close collaboration with the team, as well as artists and researchers that we invite to come and to partner up with us, to develop collections, to curate exhibitions, and to imagine public programs. Within our library holdings, so far we have amassed more than 50,000 records, and these include exhibition catalogs, reference books, anthologies, artist monographs, periodicals, and the little card that you see in the photograph is kind of a small part of our zine collection as well. We've been collecting artist zines and zines that are made by artist collectives. So it's important for us to think about the, let's say, publications with ISBN numbers as well as the grey literature, things that might fall into the cracks, so to speak. And I wanted to emphasize that more than 85% of all these records that we have in the archive, in the library collections, they have been donated to the Asia Art Archive. So it really showcases the generosity of so many individuals and so many arts organizations in the region. And if we are speaking about the reading room, I also wanted to emphasize that it's not only for individual researchers, but this is the space that we use for our exhibitions. All of our public programs, they take place at the center of the library. So we host talks, workshops, artist performances. I will give an example of a dance workshop, for instance, later today. So everything happens in the middle of the library. And to put the users at the center of the space really allows us to ask the question, what happens if an archive puts relationships at the center of their operations? This is an overview of Asia Art Archive's collections. So on the left, you will see what I just talked about, the library collections that mainly consist of secondary source materials that are physical and they are accessed in the library. And as I mentioned, they are acquired through donations and acquisitions as well. And if you look at the right-hand side, we have what we call the research collections, and these are the archives that we have in our resources. And the research collections, they mainly consist of primary source materials. So we're speaking about photographic documentation, correspondences, video recordings, and ephemera, totaling over 76,000 records at the moment. The important thing that I would like to emphasize here is that they're all digital and they are accessed on Asia Art Archive's website. So if you use the website, this is the collections page that you will see. And here, what I would like to really repeat or reiterate is that our expertise is to do research to identify archives in the region, and then to work with the owner of the archive to organize it. Sometimes they're very organized, sometimes they are less organized. So this is a work that we do. And then digitize it, digitize all the records, to annotate them. And it's a process that goes collectively, I have to say. And upload everything on the website so that they are freely accessible to anyone from any part of the world. And after we digitize the archives, what we do is that we return the physical materials, the original materials, back to the owners of the archives. And they retain, so the physical materials and also the copyright. So we don't also have the copyright of these materials. So in a way, you can think about our website almost like a publishing platform. But this is very, very crucial for our practice because we do not want to extract archives. You know, let's say that we have an archive in Manila that we have worked on. We would not want to move that archive to Hong Kong, digitize it, or keep it there. What we do is that we work with researchers who go to these locations, who organize the archive where it is, digitize it where it is, and then upload it on the website itself. So in our archival practice, going back to what Temi was saying about custodianship, for us, custodianship and preservation, it really comes through sharing. And what we really believe in is that the archives are only preserved if they are shared, if they are circulated, and if they are activated regularly. This is an overview again of our research collection. So for the moment, we have 52 archives. And a big chunk of them, so 34 archives, they come from individuals. So these are artists, art historians, curators. And here there's something that I would like to underscore. When we work with the artist archives, these are the artists that would be wearing different hats. So practicing artists who would be educators at the same time, practicing artists who would be curators or writers at the same time, or they would be running their independent art spaces. So the idea is that when you look at an individual's archive, you have a sense of not only one person, but about the much larger arts ecology that they have contributed to. Within the team, we call them the nexus artists, the artists as connecting points. And for us, it really helps us to also advocate for a very particular type of artistry, which is about networks of artists and communities of artists, rather than just individuals or individual artworks. And also by region, you will see that the focus on East Asia. We have a small team in New Delhi as well, and the case study that I will be speaking about today, it's also developed by a New Delhi team, and they're in charge of South Asia collections. We have a growing collection in Southeast Asia and also 3 Pan-Asian collections. This might be a little bit confusing here, but for instance, if you take the example of the exhibition, the Other Story, curated by Rashid Irene, in London in 1989, for instance, we have the archive of that exhibition. So going back to the categories, after the individual's archive, we have exhibition and event archives. It's something that we really want to think about when the artworks meet with the public, when the conversation happens. Organization archives, they refer to oftentimes independent art spaces. And then we have the research projects that are led by our research team. This might be more regional, let's say, research projects, or for instance, let's take the artistry of Hong Kong, and these correspond to this type of categories. You can also ask how to be comprehensive about Asia, which is impossible, as we know. And for that reason, our research team has identified several research priorities, as we call them, content priorities, so that we can really go in deep in very specific fields where we think that we can contribute more by providing more resources and also support scholarship. So these are performance art, exhibition histories, art pedagogy, art writing, independent art spaces, and gender diversity in art history. And this is a case study that I would like to share with you, Mrinalini Mukherjee Archive, that a big team of my colleagues have worked on for about 3 years. And I think she's one of these nexus artists that we are talking about, and I would like to give some examples about the type of records that we have in the archive that really illustrates that. But very briefly, as a quick introduction to who Mrinalini Mukherjee was, and I'm sure some of you are already familiar with her practice. She was an artist who was born in India in 1949, and she passed away in 2015. And she has been known for her experimentation with material and with form, especially in the sculptural field in India. This is a photograph from 1985 in the archive, and it is the garage studio of the artist. And we see several of her hemp fiber sculptures that I would like to think like effigies. They're often larger than us, larger than life. They are having these very intricate folds and intricate knotting techniques. And hemp fiber as a material was something that Mukherjee experimented with for more than 30 years. And in the late 1990s and early 2000s, she also started using ceramics and bronze. But for about, I would say, between the late 60s and the late 1990s, this was the material that she was really focusing on. And imagine this is a time when most of the time the sculptors would use durable materials like marble, stone, or bronze. And she was one of these few figures who said, I'm going to focus on hemp fiber. And she did that for more than 3 decades. So this is how the archive looks like. If you go to our website, you will see an information tab on the left. So we will have this informational text about the artist and what the archive consists of. And if you click on the records tab, as you can see, currently we have more than 2,400 records as part of the Mukherjee archive. And on the left, you see how we organize the archive. And this changes from archive to archive. For every archive in this larger 52, the body of 52 archives in the research collections, the tree structure, as we call it, it's always different. But oftentimes it starts with categories or groups that would be more about the artworks. So for instance, here we see photo documentation of artworks and exhibitions or art process documentation. And if you move towards the bottom of the tree structure, you would see correspondences, committee work files, and documents on artists and arts organizations. So how this artist was in connection with other artists, what was the type of people that she was in conversation with, and what was the institutions that she was associated with. And I will give some examples to illustrate that point as well. The first one is the artist friends. Mukherjee really started traveling in the 1960s when she was a student. She did several residencies in different parts of the world. And for us, having the photographs of the other artist friends is something that we'd like to really think about. Who were the people that she was having intellectual exchanges with? Here, for instance, we have the poet and singer Madan Gopal Singh. Gita Kapoor is in the back. It's a photograph from the late 1970s. Gita Kapoor, the renowned curator, the late artist Vivan Sundaram. On the right-hand side, we have a photograph from a picnic. This is Nilima Sheikh, Ghulam Mohammed Sheikh, and Naqshi Patel. All these artists were together in Baroda for their education. They were either teachers, educators, artist educators, or they were students. Or at the bottom, we have a photograph of Bastian Kramer that Mukherjee met during her residency at the European Ceramic Work Center in the late 1990s. So really the photographs help us to think about how the artist traveled and what type of different people that she has interacted with. Another example that I would like to give is how Mukherjee as an artist documented other artists' artworks. So on the left, we have photographs of some of the other sculptors who are their contemporaries. Anand Rimzon and K.P. Krishnakumar are just examples of that. And I believe the one on the right is also a fascinating document. It's an exhibition ephemera that is related to the Indian Radical Painters and Sculptors Association, which was a groundbreaking initiative in the late 1980s. The archive also has some materials about Mukherjee's parents. Both Binode Bahari Mukherjee and also Leela Mukherjee, they were also artists who also worked as educators. So for us, it's very important that we also see this intergenerational exchange between a family of artists. The exhibition ephemera that you see on the top left, it's actually from 2004, which is the occasion of Binode Bahari Mukherjee's birth centenary, and it was organized posthumously. And we have lots of materials about that archive. What was the type of artist who wanted to organize this, because he was one of the key educators in Shantiniketan, one of the really important art schools in India post-independence. And if we look at the photographs, of course, we will have photographs from the 50s and 60s. And on the right, we see Leela Mukherjee, Mrilini Mukherjee's mother. who is mostly known as an artist, but in the archive we found lots of materials about her position and her practice as an educator. And it's not something that has been written about in the existing scholarship so far. So these are the type of materials that we really hope that it would lead the way to new scholarship too. The last example that I would like to bring from the archive are these institutional files that are quite amazing in my opinion, because these are the files that would be related to the advisory committees of key institutions in the late 80s and 1990s in India that Mukherjee was part of. So for instance, on the right, we have a document from Rupankar Museum of Fine Arts in Bhopal. And this is basically a time when Mukherjee was part of the advisory committee. We're speaking about late 1980s. And we speak about, we see the details of the agenda and the types of exhibitions that Mukherjee herself was also interested in talking about and advising. And if you look at the left, it's a document that is related to the National Gallery of Modern Art in New Delhi that will give us details about the proposed exhibitions for the early 1990s. Mukherjee was invited to be part of the advisory board for 2 years. This was in 1993. And we see what type of exhibitions the advisory board was talking about when it comes to traveling abroad and also basically inviting exhibitions to India. And the type of exchanges that they were interested in when it comes to country type of partnerships. So I guess what these materials really illustrate is that she was one of these nexus artists, like I was talking about. And again, it's the institutional landscape that we are learning from. It's the artistic landscape, the different artistic milieux that we are learning from. And this is really the potential of the archive for us. And after a brief overview of the archive, I really want to talk about the exhibition that we organized in the library. So this exhibition, focusing on this very particular archive, it was titled Mold the Wing to Match the Photograph, and it was curated by my colleagues Nupur Desai, Pallavi Arora, and Samira Bose. And we had it in our library in Hong Kong. And the idea was to really bring a historical artwork into the library setting and put it in conversation with the archival materials. For us, this is a very important, I would say, practice that we do, because if you think about the tree structure and then how the archive exists on the website, it's a resource. And we have informational materials, but there is no argument, there is no thesis. Of course, our researchers write about why this archive is important, or what type of new scholarship it might lead to, but we would refrain from making any propositions or any arguments on the website because we wanted to keep them as resources, and the idea is to make them accessible. But for exhibitions, this is where we have theses. This is where we want to speculate. This is where we want to tell stories. So for us, exhibition making is a really core practice of our archiving. So the incredible thing that happened with this exhibition is that we were extremely grateful to be able to have this historical work of Mukherjee from 1986 from the collection of the Kiran Nadar Museum in New Delhi, which is an incredible private art museum in India. And this was the height of Mukherjee's experimentation with form and also with material. It's called Pari, and it translates as the otherworldly being or the nymph. And I think it really speaks to all the local iconographies and mythologies that Mukherjee herself was interested in. You'll see that it's very close to the ceiling, and it's suspended from the ceiling with a little hook. And it's really touching the floor. There is no plinth. So it's very important that the artwork is interacting with this environment, which is the artist's intention. And it was incredible that it was first exhibited within a library setting, because oftentimes Mukherjee's work is part of, I would say, established institutional exhibitions. And for us, we were very lucky to be able to create this very intimate encounter with the artwork as well as the archive itself. So if you think about the existing scholarship, again, about Mukherjee's work, oftentimes art historians wrote about how she worked intuitively and how improvisation was one of the key elements of her practice. And this is also how she talked about it. She gave very few interviews during her lifetime, but when she would speak about her work, the idea of organicness, the idea of intuition, improvisation, they would be key for the artist's work. And when our team in India started working on this archive, they really hoped that perhaps they would find a drawing, maybe a sketch, or maybe a blueprint for one of these, large-scale, very intricate sculptures that Mukherjee created. But they didn't find any. But what they were able to find was extensive photographic documentation of the artworks and also installation instructions. And it was a completely different part of the artist's practice that we have known so far. And this is the type of tension that we really wanted to create in the exhibition. So you see the artwork, and this is the first area that you would see as you walk into our library in Hong Kong. And if you go through this door on the left, the first set of materials that you would encounter would be the contact sheets. And these are contact sheets from between 1970 and 2000, so we're speaking about 30 years. And here Mukherjee would show how, or the set would show how Mukherjee was almost obsessively taking photographs of the artworks after they were done. For instance, this example shows that some of them have different lighting, maybe the posture of the sculpture is slightly different. And the markings, they belong to the artist herself as well. So we really wanted to show in the exhibition about how the artist was thinking, how her decision process was. Because when she does these markings, this basically indicates that she thinks that this is the form to keep the materials. So the contact sheets, they served actually a couple of different purposes. The first one is that she wanted to ensure that the shape and the dimensions of these works would be preserved. And if you think about the sculpture itself, it's hand fiber. It ages over time, it droops over time, and it really changes over time. So that understanding of using photography as a way to preserve the form and preserve the measurements is something that was quite interesting for us. And secondly, our researchers found out from some of the interviews as well that Mukherjee used these photo documentation to think about how to experiment with these installations, when it comes to the height, when it comes to the display, as by way of comparing these different photographs. She would also make the final decision about how to just keep the form. And finally, she would also use these photographs to create installation instructions. And an example you can see on the right-hand side here. This is the installation instruction from 1986. And it is the installation instruction for the artwork that we had in the exhibition. And it was one of the most fascinating documents for us because it does several things. You will see that there is an X right here. It is the point of suspension. We will see very detailed measurements about for instance, here it says 215 centimeters height from point of suspension to floor. And when it comes to the body of the work, you will see that she would be extremely specific and say, this should be 70, this should be 25, and this should be 83. This was actually quite different for us because when we received the artwork in a crate, it came almost like a closed body, and we had to open it up and really follow these measurements, which was not very easy. And in some of the cases, like the 83 centimeters that I was speaking about around the wings, it's not possible anymore because of the material, which keeps changing over time. But when we think about the title of the exhibition, Mold the Wing to Match the Photograph, it's also a reference to one of these installation instructions. We wanted to keep the artist's voice, which was not that apparent in the way that art historians so far have written about her work. Also, one thing that I would like to emphasize here is that she wanted to start having these instructions when the artwork started traveling internationally, and she was not able to travel with the artwork all the time. So this would really guide all the museums or the galleries that would be showing the artwork when she was not there. And it's a A4 size document, right? It's a document that we just wanted to share with these institutions. And what we did in the exhibition space was to enlarge it so that the scale would almost match the scale of the artwork itself. So if you were in this very particular vantage point in the library, you would be able to see both the archival material, the record, and the artwork at the same time, being at the same height. So this is a type of dialogue that we are very much interested in, how the artwork can change the reading of an archival document, and then how an archival record can really shape our understanding of an artwork or an artistic practice. Another set that we had in the exhibition was 35 millimeter slides that Mukherjee had in her archive. When I talked to our researchers who really delved into the archive, Nupur Desai actually told me that there were more than 22,000 of these slides, and I'm sure most of us are very much familiar with these materials, especially art historians among ourselves, in terms of the way that we studied with them. And in this case, we wanted to show 700 of these slides that would be focusing on the artworks. And our exhibitions, they last for 6 months. And if you think about the light sensitivity of these materials, it was impossible to show the original materials. So we said, if we're going to go with the reproductions, why don't we think about the ways in which we encountered the archive, which was not very organized, I would say. So we created this, I would say, display system with moving racks, and the viewers were encouraged to take the slides out, look at them, and then put it back in anywhere that they wanted. So this is to say that it was not organized in a chronological way, and which really shows the ways in which we basically encountered with the archive in this almost chaotic fashion. But if you take a couple of steps back, you would be also able to see the body of work that belongs to 30 years. So it's almost like a mini retrospective exhibition of the artist herself. And I think it's quite interesting to think about the scale, thinking about enlarging things, but also thinking about how we often encounter with the artwork in this monumental way. And we try to create this bodily connection with the artwork. And in this case, you can actually hold the slide in your hand. And again, it goes back to the intimacy of the archive that is very important for us to create and change the understanding of the artworks as well. The last section of the exhibition, it was about the only organized part of the archive, which was the travel photographs of Mrinalini Mukherjee. So starting with the late 60s, when she started traveling, she again consistently took photographs of the places that she visited. It was really important for us to look at these materials not only as leisure activities, but thinking about what her reference points were. Because when people asked the artist during her lifetime, how do you actually do these works? How do you make these works? She gave these incredible, enigmatic, but beautiful answers. In one of them, she says, I have certain images in my mind, then I start somewhere and I let it grow in all directions. But we don't know what these certain images are. She did not specify anything about her artistic research. So when we think about the organization of this very particular section, we really think that this was a section that she was continuously going back to. In a way, she was referring to these images over and over again. which made us speculate that these are the reference points. So we started looking for repeated patterns in this particular section. And we saw the images of natural overgrowth that you can see on the top image here. It's an image from Angkor, from Cambodia. We see a lot of arches, the architectural spaces, but especially the form of the arch is something that's very much repeated in these photographs. And also, as you can see from the photographs at the bottom, there are many photographs of deities, goddesses from temples, but also from rituals like the Kathakali dance, where we're thinking about the performing body, the dancing body, or the moving body. And this was a more of a speculative exercise from our side, because again, we cannot 100% say that this was the artistic research that we can now say for certain. But again, our art historian friends one day said that if they were to write a paper about Mukherjee's research, these are the materials now they would be able to use. And last slide from the exhibition is a selection of 4 books. We had 10 books from her personal library that would also show how she was thinking about herself, what was the lineages that she was thinking. So in the center, we have the living tradition perspective on modern Indian art by K.G. Subramanian, who was one of the most influential artist educators in Baroda, where Mukherjee studied. And thinking about the historical forms, the traditional forms, and incorporating them and redefining what modern art can be was definitely one of the preoccupations of this generations of artists who really wanted to think about art history after after independence. And Mukherjee herself also never identified as a textile artist, but she wanted to think about herself in the lineage of other sculptors. So we have artist monographs of several artists from South Asia that she found very influential, but still she would follow the textile art biennials, like this one from Lausanne that you can see at the bottom, or the textile art magazine from France that she was also following. I want to continue with just 3 examples of the public programs that we have built around this program, because for us, we see the exhibition as a much larger project, and we use the public programs to keep unfolding the questions that we have been asking. The first one is a Zoom, it's a Zoom meeting, where Nupur Desai, that I was speaking about, my colleague, invited 2 art historians, Emilia Terracciano from the University of Manchester, who did a lot of work on Mukherjee and her archive, and Michelle Wong, who worked on the archive of the late Hong Kong artist Habib Chun for about a decade. And when we think about these 2 artists, they were also speaking about this in the session, where they really wanted to delve into the relationship between photography and sculpture. We know that they never met each other, or the context, the artistic context that they worked in, they did not necessarily overlap. But there was something that's very common to these 2 artists, Habib Chun and Moeni Mukherjee, which was they were known as sculptors, but there's a lot of photography in their archives. And they use photography as a way to study their artwork, and also as a way to think about self-representation as artists. So this is the conversation that we wanted to have. And the reason why I wanted to bring this as an example is that this is the type of comparative reasons that we wanted to make when it comes to scholarship around artist archives. The other example is artist performance. You see Moana Chan on the left in this photograph. Moana Chan is a Hong Kong and Lisbon-based artist who's been making knitted sculptures since 2004. And the material itself, she shreds books or just published materials, and she turns them into a form of yarn almost, and she knits with them. So the example that you see here, it's a wearable sculpture that she created recently over the past couple of years. And for the performance, she invited a dancer Francisco Borges to join her and to think about movement and stillness, which was something that was so key to Mukherjee's practice as well. If you think about the travel photographs, the moving body section was one of the conversation starters when we invited Movana to come and to respond with an artwork. Not necessarily, let's say, an act of interpretation, but for us to be an excuse for the creation of hosting an artwork in the library space. So this is what they did during the performance. At some points, they were extremely still, and there were points they were moving very, very slowly. And this was the question that they really what makes a sculpture and what makes a performance. And the last example that I would like to share with you is a dance workshop or a somatic movement workshop that was led by David Lang, who's a dancer and choreographer who's been teaching contact improvisation dance in Hong Kong for the past 20 years. And this is David in the center. And for this, we removed all the tables in the reading room. And David wanted to lead this workshop for about 2 hours. We did not speak, but we were just hearing his voice and following his instructions. And what was really interesting for him, to look at the Mukherjee archive was this moment when the artist stopped being improvisational in her work and started being instructional. So the installation instructions, they were fascinating for David as someone who teaches improvisational dance. And he said, that's the moment that I really want to hold. And I want to the slides about this project with this particular photograph is that one of the most compelling criticisms that we have received for the exhibition came after this dance workshop. There was a short sharing session and 2 of the participants, and they are not professional dancers, by the way, but people who are interested in moving their bodies. They said, if you want to think about the practice of improvisational dance, or if you want to think about yoga, you would know that intuition and precision, they all speak about this tension, in the, and what the exhibition, what the archive is leading for a new way for the scholarship. We always said that on the one hand, we have intuition and improvisation. On the other hand, we had precision and control and measurement. And they said that the way that you are speaking about these concepts, you are stuck with binaries. Maybe you want to think about that. They said it in a very, very gentle way, but I believe this is really one of the most compelling criticisms that we have received about this project overall. So in conclusion, I wanted to bring in a different type of archival image, which is an image from the NASA archive. And I want to think with you through this image. I think I pressed something by mistake. Oh, sorry. Okay, sure. Oh, but I really wanted to think through the image.
I know. I hear you. I hear you.
Sorry about that.
Oh, what is that sound? I'm sorry.
It sounds like a busy phone line.
It does. Okay.
Is the Zoom okay?
I'm sure.
Yeah, I tend to random things. Sorry about that.
Should I check the Zoom?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I believe it's working.
It's still recording.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So we'll go to.
Thank you, Tammy.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to the image. Thank you for your patience. So the image that you see on the screen is an image of Taiko, which is a supernova located in the Cassiopeia constellation. It's an image that I often think about when I want to talk about the type of work that we try to do at the archive. So to highlight the three-dimensional nature of Tycho, what the scientists did was to use different X-ray images of the supernova and create this composite image using different colors. So the reason why I really wanted to have the image on the screen is that I really want you to take a closer look at this image and look at the colors. If you notice the red color, the red represents the materials moving away from the Earth. And if you look at the blue ones, the blue represents materials moving towards us. You will also see various other colors here. There, you will see yellow, green, blue-green, orange, and purple, and they symbolize a diverse array of energies, elements, and directions of motion. And for me, this image really serves as an analogy for the constellation that we really try to create at the archive, a constellation of resources, constellation of relationships, constellation of stories and histories. And as we collaborate with other artists and scholars, we continually pose the following questions. What is most visible? What remains obscured? What moves towards us and what moves away from us? And how can we establish connections between seemingly disparate narratives? Which brings me to my last slide. And as a curator working at the archive, I would say that these are the key ideas that I try to put into practice with our team and collaborators. A research-based archive, an artist-driven archive, a propositional archive, and also an improvisational archive, so that we can be, or we can become, better storytellers to contribute to a more generous artistry. Thank you.
So I want to first thank Özge for contributing to our conversation about sustenance, some ideas around stillness, movement, molding, and constellation this morning. And then also too, in the spirit, I think, of constellation, there are so many generative lines of extension that you've offered us to think about that are artistic, art historical, art educational, and then also curatorial. So on that note, I'd like to invite to the stage Yedong to join us, who's coming with us from our archive summer. He's going to be speaking in conversation with us. Özge is no stranger, Özge is familiar with us in South Korea, having served not only as a speaker today, but also in a curatorial role with the Gwangju Biennale previously, and then now senior curator at Asia Archive, in conversation with archivists here and curators here. So I'm going to hand this over to you. Thank you so much for this. Yes, okay.
I'm Yedong, and I'm very honored to be here as a response to Özge's presentation. And then thanks also Tommy and Daniel for this conference and organizing this session. And also Özge, who made this session as more collaborative format.
I think it's because there's multiple screens right now.
Opened into last year in 2023. This is a new branch from the Seoul Museum of Art. Is dedicating to collecting, preserving, in providing access primary and secondary source on Korean modern and contemporary arts. As it was envisioned as an institution that converged both art archives and art museums as one institution, we developed different spaces not only for storage, but also for exhibition, learning programs, a lot of public programs in order to activate archives as live through this different diverse programs. An architecture itself consists of 3 buildings, a collaborative space for exhibition and reference library, a reference room, while exchanging space and learning space for public and learning programs respectively. I won't go over through too much details on what we're doing as a program-wise, but there are 5 main endeavors we are working with this archival material: collection development, research, exhibition, learning and public programs, and as well as digitalization. Actually, we are collecting 3 types of records. Art records made by gifts of the artist, but by also what we call as mediators, our critics, curators, researchers as well, who actually contribute to distribute and review this whole art scene of the Korea, which was not well documented or studied in a Korean art scene. So through this acquisition of the archives, other than artists as well, we try to enrich the picture of Korean modern and contemporary arts. Now we having this 21 collection and 62,000 items registered because we started our collection development before our opening, and we are hoping to expand more histories on Korean modern and contemporary art, as well as other related area in this field. We also just started to launch a project for institution records of the SEMA entirety. We collected records of the Seoul Media City Biennale from 2000, which is very important output of the Seoul Museum of Art. And also we create a system that we can yearly transfer the documents from the different departments. And also we do have a book collection separately developed as in order to make sure people to have a reading space and reading opportunity in reference library. Among many other programs, we focus on a research program as to link archival materials to other programs or other public programs. So we do a collection-based research, which produce a lot of literature and description material. And by adding different information from the different sources. And we also do theme-based research program, which led to another exhibition or public program while we're doing the network program with other like-minded organizations and also with the university where we develop curriculums for the class, but also we invite future creators, future archivists to look close into our archives and use them in their academic endeavors. We're doing also a lot of exhibition, learning, public programs. Also, we do have a digital art archives where people can search the different data sets that we collected, serving the digital image and database, and a lot of participatory menus that you can configure the different data sets in order to find new connections like collection visualization or participate in transcription menu as well. And for this digital art archives, we can allow our archival material to be shared through online. And also we provide a lot of information on the collection in terms of authority records or research guidelines, other data sets we built up for annually. Well, even though our institution operate probably little more than 1 year, there have been a lot of initiatives that have made. And as a curator, I observed very various perspectives on what archives are and how we try to use them through that perspectives. For instance, one of the learning programs we did Inside Box based on the archives of Yedong. He's a performance artist, but in his early years, do a lot of performances in the nature, try to have this a different sensation and integrate that sensation into his work as well. And one of the curator approach to this archive invite very young participants to feel the similar sensation that an artist might have. So she used the archives not only make people learn about artistic practice, but also connect to more daily experiences for the young participant and get acquainted with the archives. On the right is the installation photograph of one of the inaugurational exhibition, Cheerful Learning, Delightful Knowledge, Joyful Knowing, based on collection of Channing. Channing was known for his endeavors in art critic of realist movement in Korea, but also he worked as a poet, research scholar in the film studies as well in Korea. We collected his collection after his death, which consists almost 20,000 books. So the curatorial team had difficult to deal with these materials, not only because it's a quantity, but also in terms of how we interpret book materials that he possessed. So they changed the point of view from looking at this archive as very direct source for his research outcomes or outputs, but rather view as sort of a repertoire that record the intellectual scene of after the Korean War. So the exhibition tells about the story, not only Channing's path through this intellectual scene, but also a lot of communication and interaction that happened and the different trends that Korean society adopts during this time. In this sense, I think archive itself, in this context, actually we hold an exhibition called To the Last Generation of Kim Young-ik, which based on archival materials of Kim Young-ik. Kim Young-ik was born in 1947. He was not trained as a painter or educated as a painter when he was a young. But so he first entered into the agriculture and life science of university. But one day suddenly he decided to become an artist during his college years. So he dropped from the school. He entered into the Kyung University for his painting education. And it was during that time among our students or young artists who changed their interest in from stylistic or formal experiments to more theoretical turns, while the art scene of the time, like from 60s to early 70s, dominated by the very Greenberg ideas of modernist painting, pure nature of the modernist painting, where you see the rise of informe or monochrome, now known as Tansekwa. In that scene, many young artists grouped together in order to study and research new theories they try to adopt and try to apply for their works, but also they try to explain their their artwork as with their own languages or theories. So you can see on the left that Kim also be part of the Esprit group, or on the right the ST group, which now known as experimental art in Korea in 70s. So Kim Young had made his first debut with this plain object series, where he sort of deployed his own logic, his own definition of the painting that as a flat and objectness exists between the illusionistic and realistic representation. But soon he put an end to his artwork because of coincided with the rise of democratization movement and also the realist art movement, which criticized much harshly on modernist art movement at the time. So he ended up his plain object series, and he tried go over through different types of serial works too. It was not during this 1990s area where Kim Young started to produce a lot of canvas work, which criticized the modernist art with non-modernist element called Come Closer and Come Closer. It is a series of paintings showing the arrangement of circles or squares. But when you come close to his painting, you can see scribbles, brush strokes, or stains which is non-modernist elements. And he experimented this variation with form of banner or wall sheet, where he figured out much larger context of the artworks. During this period of time in the late 1990s, Kim also engaged with a lot of our institutional reformation movement of the time. So, and also the foundation of the alternative space pool. And he engaged in the public art rather than producing the canvas works. And gradually, his works carry the social messages, especially ecological one. And he embraced something that is abandoned or something already stained as a center of his works in order to criticize modernist art, but also a modern society that he observed in Korean society during the past 50 years. We collected Kim Young collection in 2018 and 2020, which you now can see the different materials that he produced and collected for 50 years. It includes, of course, art and exhibition-related materials, but also his engagement with our institution reformation, other public programs that he involved. He also worked as a professor from late 1980s onwards. So there's a lot of materials on the art education and also personal materials. You can see there's a lot of writings, manuscripts, models, photographic document of his late performance and drawings. From the very beginning of this exhibition's organization, what really puzzled the curatorial team was that this kind of a dramatic change of style and forms in his works. And he was usually evaluated as an artist that cannot be categorized or in certain main movement of Korean art history. So some of his early works summed up in modernist art group exhibition, while his later work rather showed in realist art circles. So we think that it is not just because his work changed over time dramatically, but it's also this canon that only admits sort of two lines of streams in Korean art history. One is modernist art, the other is realist. Thus, Kim Young-il's work as a whole could not be really appreciated properly. In that sense, we try to make sure that do not focus like chronologic stylistic development, but also try to make into a more whole body. Another player is archives. Kim produced so many writings. He even published a collection of his writing in 2011, Why Do I Art? And we figured his practice of writing are not just simply producing a new memos, new writings every time. He visited the past examples, past writing, editing, and modify, and try to make refer to past notes as well in the new notes. It very resembles to his artistic production, artistic creation of work. For instance, Despair Completed, where he erased his 1990s polka dot series with paints over, where he revisited his old canvases already stained and make coffin for his old past works in order to send them to the next world. So his writing practices, his way of making documents, records, is pretty much resemble to what he's doing, his artistic production. He always insists that his writing is not just something that he explained or made notes out of what he's doing, but it is kind of part of his art. So in that sense, this resembler seems to be very important to us to interpret. Another instance is that Kim fundamentally considered himself as conceptual art, which he defines as art that can be only completed when complemented by language or words. So in other ways, it is not only important how visual representation he created, but also the idea or concept that he wanted to convey, no matter what kind of medium he used for. So in this 1997 retrospective solo exhibition, Kim chose not to reproduce what was then lost. Rather, he replaced them with the archives because it conveys the same idea that of the 1980s work that he reproduced in the photographic documents that he announced his end of the plain object series of the 1970s. So in that sense, we see Kim's works is he used archive as very artistic medium. And it is very echoes with his later work on the left that entitled Work That Would Be Open After My Death, Work That Would Not Be Open After My Death, while it conveys the same idea that not have intentionally not to show what's inside of the his wrapping or boxes. As you can see, his archival material on the right. So if it conveys the same idea, he made these archives as equal to artwork as well. So we try to extract the keywords that show his crucial conceptual approaches in archives and artworks, and try to place archives very equal or parallel to artworks as they are in his artistic practice. It was opened in last year, consists of 38 artworks and 186 items, where we put in the self-denial part the very photographic documents facing the artwork that has the same concept that self-criticizing himself in the past or the current stages. We also put the models of 1980s adjacent to the 2020s triptych work, which both shows his editorial attitude in his artistic practices. In the 80s, he did not, he refrained from the more expressive ways to paint, but rather chose to cut out the plane and cut it out from the place, which is very resemblable to what he did in his coffin series, where he collected the different materials in one coffin. We also recreated his 1990s installation view next to where he tried to experiment the archival materials and other prints for the audience to flip around the pages and not just viewing the artwork. We placed this installation next to the connection work where he submitted his artwork in more non-art form. We insert a lot of background sessions as well in order to explain what motivates him as well. And in his later work, which carries very ecological messages, and where he revisits what is abandoned or what is in the past, it sort of very resembles to his writing in his earlier works, because this idea of eco-anarchism or ecofeminism he employed in his later work, pretty embedded in his early works. So we also placed them at the very beginning of the exhibition in order to connect to exhibition galleries. And in the middle of the last representation, we put his drawing diaries on scratch papers where he produced from 2005 to 2009, which contains a lot of his personal stories on his death, his suicidal impulse, very private emotion that he felt on the scratch paper. And this kind of aspect of his archival practices is really what we think of as very affective medium. In line of this presentation, we also place the section called Archive of Thought, where you can invite the audience to look the pages of his writing, look the pages that handle archives directly, and also the participatory session where audience can actually record the views of the viewing boxes. And we much observed that the audience is not only trying to get the information about the artist's practice, but also they have this kind of having this kind of connection with the artist's personal or private or emotional statement with their own personal memories and experiences. And this is one of the key concepts that Kyung-Nae Lee, scholar from the archival studies, indicated in her article of the exhibition catalog as affective value of archives. This kind of affective interest from the archival sciences really triggers a lot of interest in interpreting this material to analyze how this audience really interact with these archival materials. As working with archiving within the archive, we're facing the archives or documents or papers or writings are something that is somehow subsidiary or something even collateral to during the process of artistic production. But when we're working with archive more closely and depending on how we approach to this medium, we think that it can be very artistic medium, it can be curatorial medium, and it's also working as effective medium. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Yedong. And thanks also to Özge. So I think that these presentations have really set up a lot of the questions that will, inevitably arrive in people's paper presentations over the afternoon. And then we'll have a concluding session actually back in this room at the end of the day before dinner, which will take up some interrelated questions in terms of artist legacies, looking at Namjoon Pike Archive and looking at the history of the Black Mountain College. And so I want to make a few announcements as we transition. Moving into the afternoon sessions and the session before lunch, I just want to remind you that all of the updated rooms are in the conference program online. There's going to be 4 buildings where parallel sessions are happening today, so just be mindful of moving throughout the space and making sure you're consulting the map. There's been several updated sessions that were added with some really incredible local thinkers and presenters. So be sure to look at them, even if you looked yesterday. There's been a few changes. And a final announcement is that the conference dinner still has a few spots open tonight, and if you want to sign up, you can talk to Tamara Alba outside, and that's also, and then you'll get an email with details about the location. So again, thank you to our presenters today, and you'll get some instructions about coffee that you can grab and go on your way to the session when you go out the door. But thank you. Yeah.